Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me the opportunity to give a presentation at this year's Asia Pacific Rabies meeting. In the next few minutes, I will talk about how we can speed up mass dog vaccination campaigns with a new approach of all vaccination. Before I go into the details, I would first like to briefly remind you of the background of today's workshop. As you know, dog-mediated rabies is a major health problem, especially in low and middle income countries in Asia and Africa, where the burden of disease is highest. Unfortunately, in the 21st century, rabies still causes an estimated 60,000 human deaths worldwide annually. And it is a matter of fact that 99% of human rabies cases result from dog bites. And this makes it actually very clear that controlling rabies in dogs is of utmost importance if rabies in humans is to be prevented. So vaccinating dogs against rabies saves human lives. But just vaccinating single dogs is not enough. Only when a large proportion of the dog population in a given area is immune to rabies can the cycle of infection be broken. That's why mass dog vaccination is key to herd immunity. So how does this actually work? The scheme presented here in this slide illustrates the concept of the basic reproduction number called R0 and the potential for controlling and eliminating rabies through mass dog vaccination. As you can see here, when adequate levels of dog vaccination coverage are obtained, the effective reproduction number R falls below 1. Transmission is interrupted, canine rabies is brought under control and will ultimately be eliminated. However, the effectiveness of your campaigns determines the dynamics of this process. In other words, the more effective the mass vaccination campaigns, the quicker you will see success. Parenteral vaccination is the only approach used for addressing canine rabies at scale. However, while there are numerous success stories on parenteral mass dog vaccination campaigns, there are also reports on increased inadequacies of this approach. This table here shows examples from the published literature of vaccination campaigns that have met or failed to meet vaccination targets. So one might ask why vaccination programs such as those shown on the right are unsuccessful in terms of vaccination coverage. So what problem could be behind this? And one of the main problems, among others, is free-roaming dogs. Free-roaming dogs are actually abundant everywhere, in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America, and even in the Mediterranean, and can vary greatly in numbers. These animals play an important role in the transmission of rabies virus and the maintenance of the chain of infection. So the question is how to reach them best for vaccination then. The use of teams to catch, vaccinate and release dogs, as shown on the left-hand side, who chase after every dog is of course not an option. Instead, an approach where dogs are coming to the vaccinator, as shown here on the right-hand side, in anticipation for food, would be an ideal solution. And this is where oral rabies vaccination comes in, because it is a promising solution for vaccinating free-roaming dogs. Basically, it's like feeding the dogs, as you can see on the left-hand side. You offer the dog a bait containing the liquid vaccine, as shown on the right-hand side, and whilst chewing on it, the vaccine is released into the mouth cavity and absorbed via the tonsils and mucous membranes. Done. Oral rabies vaccination of dogs is actually not a new idea. It is actually a revival of an old idea. And even the WHO and VOA are promoting the increased use of oral vaccination of dogs in the fight against canine rabies. As a result, the tripartite has recently issued new recommendations on oral vaccination of dogs for field application and for integration into dog rabies control programs. And this comprehensive document covers 5 main modules, including the vaccine itself, the vaccine baits, regulatory affairs, distribution systems, and campaign activities. The oral vaccination concept for dogs consists of 3 pillars. Vaccines form the first pillar, followed by the bait system, and last but not least, the distribution system. They are all interconnected and depend on each other. The best vaccine is useless if the bait is not attractive to dogs, while conversely a good bait cannot compensate for an inefficient vaccine. And even if you have an optimal vaccine bait, you need to know how best to get it to the dogs. The document highlights in detail the minimum requirements for the safety and efficacy of oral rabies vaccines when they are to be used for dogs, as set out in the rabies chapter of the VOA Terrestrial Manual on Diagnostic Tests and Vaccines for Terrestrial Animals. The safety of oral rabies vaccines is of paramount importance because we are talking about replication-competent vaccines. The new recommendations provide an overview of what animal and non-animal studies are required by both the World Organization for Animal Health and the European Medicines Agency to ensure that potential vaccine candidates are safe for target and non-target species as well as humans. These are extremely high hurdles for approval. For the first time, and according to literature, there is an oral rabies vaccine for dogs available. The document also contains detailed information on bait specifications and challenges, such as the palatability of the baits, vaccine formulations, regulatory and other issues, proper bait handling, and also addresses the issue of locally made versus universal baits. As far as the distribution system is concerned, 3 different models are recommended. The first model is the handout and retrieve model, as you can see here on the left-hand side. The second is the distribution of vaccine baits to dog owners. And last but not least, the third model is the so-called wildlife model, which should only be used for true feral dogs that live independently and without support from humans. The document also provides a table highlighting the advantages and disadvantages of each of the distribution systems in terms of the target for reaching 70% vaccination coverage in dogs, logistics, cost, and other related issues. Now that the first oral rabies vaccines for dogs is available, field trials have been conducted on almost every continent, as you can see on the map to the right, with Namibia and Thailand conducting the world's largest field trials. Intelligent planning is everything. Fortunately, there are planning tools for the implementation of mass dog vaccination campaigns available that will guide you regarding the calculation of appropriate numbers of parenteral and oral rabies vaccine doses you need to use to achieve these goals. The cost of oral rabies vaccines is always an issue and a frequently asked question. Yes, the price is high compared to parenteral vaccines, but it is not just the direct costs that need to be considered here, but also the indirect costs for vaccinating dogs in the long-term run. In other words, what effort am I putting in? It was shown, for example, that an oral bait handout method for free-roaming dogs can reduce the per-dog costs of vaccination and increase vaccination coverage. This finding holds even when vaccine baits would cost up to 10 times the price of parenteral vaccines, provided there is a large dog population or proportion of dogs that are never confined. However, it can be assumed that when more oral rabies vaccines for dogs are licensed and available on the market, the costs of vaccine baits will go down. However, there are a lot of things to consider if it comes to the planning of efficient mass dog vaccination campaigns against rabies. As mentioned before, strategic planning is key for efficient rabies control, and this usually is laid down in a national strategic plan. If it comes to coverage, we have learned that you need to aim for high vaccination coverage in your dog population to create herd immunity. And in order to do this, you need to know how many dogs are actually living in your country. So estimation of the dog population is of utmost importance if you want rabies control to become a success story. Also, you need to make up your mind about your target population. In other words, identify high-risk areas and prioritize mass dog vaccination campaigns in those regions before you scale up. Another point to consider is logistics. You need to have plans available for efficient vaccine delivery, transportation, storage, and personnel available. If it comes to resources, ensure adequate funding is available, vaccines and supplies for consecutive campaigns are there. Another important point is community engagement. This to build trust, raise awareness among people, and encourage participation in mass dog vaccination campaigns. Monitoring and evaluation of your campaigns will tell you how effective were the campaigns and what is the vaccination coverage achieved. Surveillance is of utmost importance. It is actually the laboratory confirmation of the presence or absence of rabies in a given area, and as such is a success indicator for your dog rabies control program. Sustainability is another important issue. So you need to develop strategies to sustain vaccination efforts over time. And last but not least, collaboration. Without coordination with relevant stakeholders to maximize impacts, the likelihood that your mass dog vaccination campaigns will be successful are decreasing. Documenting vaccination efforts is critical for program monitoring and interpretation of campaign effectiveness. In any case, paper records should be strictly avoided, and free and easy to use mobile data collection platforms should be used instead. This is more important than serological monitoring which is not recommended. Last but not least, a very important point, as mentioned already several times, is the constant evaluation of the efficiency of your campaigns. This is actually quite simple. Rabies surveillance, not serology, is the key indicator of the success of your dog rabies control program. So in terms of money and effort spent, your campaigns are only successful if the number of rabies cases decreases over time. And with this slide, I would like to thank you for your attention. We are convinced that oral vaccination can make a difference in vaccinating free-roaming dogs and be a game changer in the global fight against dog-mediated rabies. It just needs to be given a chance. Thank you very much.